إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار أما بعد. Then my sisters, I welcome you today, which is the 11th of September in the year 2021 in the Gregorian calendar, which coincides with the 4th of Safar in the year 1443 after the Hijrah. And today we begin a series of lessons concerning and related to the topic of the characteristics of a righteous wife. So this is the sifatu zawjati salihah, or the characteristics of a righteous wife. And before I continue, just maybe some words of advice for you, barakallahu feekum, that these types of lessons, that though they are directed towards our sisters, and more so those of you who are married, but nevertheless there will be, insha'Allah, within it some benefit and guidance and direction towards our sisters who are not yet married, maybe because they are young, or maybe they are still searching for that righteous man, insha'Allah. May Allah make it easy for you. And likewise directed towards some of our brothers who may be listening, either listening to this recording or listening online. Because it is easy for humans, for each of us, that when we see a set of rules and ayat and hadith of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam that are in our favor, that it is possible that due to our inclinations, that we take on board what is in our benefit and we do not pay attention to the rights of others. So it is easy for some men, not all men, but for some men to say that, look, the ustad that he mentioned today, the rights of the man over the woman, so these are my rights. And then he starts listing them in accordance to what I've said. And that which I've mentioned from the words of Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, without paying attention to the fact that his wife has rights over him also. Rights of maintenance, rights of protection, rights of provision, rights of kindness, rights of goodness. So sometimes that goes to the back of the mind of the brother or the husband or the father, and he focuses upon that which is owed to him. And likewise with respect to the sister, that you have rights over me, my husband, but I have rights over you. And each one, instead of harmonizing between the texts, they pull the texts towards themselves. And this is not the purpose of revelation and the huquq and the rights that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to each and every one of us, whether it be the father or the mother or the son or the daughter or the husband or the wife or the baby or the elderly or the scholar or the student of knowledge or even the animals, that they have their rights also. that the purpose of these rites and the greatest of those rites is indeed the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He be worshipped and obeyed, and the right of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that He be followed. That these rites, when we see as it relates to interactions between us, the buyer and the seller, the one who makes a contract, the aqdun nikah, the contract of marriage, that these rites, that when they are shown to us in the revelation, that when we see them in the revelation, we harmonize between them and we do not pull them towards ourselves to the exclusion of the rights of others. So the husband does not say, these are my rights, and then he pushes and he pulls those that are his rights and pushes away the rights of his wife. Or the wife that she mentions, these are my rights, X, Y, Z. Do I have not a right to this? Do I not have a right to that? And then she pushes away the rights of her husband. So that's the first point. The second point that I wish to make is that these are gatherings of learning, inshaAllah. These are gatherings where Allah is remembered. And the ahadith of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam are mentioned as a means of nearness to Allah, because ilm is a nearness to Allah. Whomsoever, as the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, that whomsoever seeks a path in pursuit of knowledge, then Allah makes easy for him the path to Jannah. So seeking knowledge is a path to Jannah. And Allah seeks forgiveness for the pursuer of knowledge and for the possessor of knowledge, the alim. So these lessons that you attend, whether it be this lesson or the lessons of my noble brothers and mashayikh, my elders and my peers, that when you attend those gatherings, you see them as gatherings of ibadah. That you see them as gatherings where the angels, they gather. Those angels that travel across the earth through the valleys and pathways and streets, searching for those places where Allah is mentioned and the dhikr of Allah is made, where the people are reminded of Allah, where the knowledge is taught and absorbed. That those angels, they gather at those gatherings and they attend them and they envelop them, and that they rise to the heavens informing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, though he well knows of those gatherings, that these people are seeking your forgiveness, that they are seeking Jannah, that they are seeking protection from the fire. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informs His angels that indeed I have forgiven them. Even the one that attends, or that sister that attends, and she did not intend the knowledge, she did not intend the gathering where Allah is remembered, but she came for another need, but she's present nevertheless. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informs His angels that my forgiveness also encompasses that person. So when you sit in these gatherings, pay attention. Make sure that your hearts are present. Make sure that you are not here ghafilat, negligent or inattentive. Bring your notepads, your pens, or whatever you write in your iPad or whatever you use, and take notes. Even if it be that you can gather 5 points of benefit in one gathering, you have benefited. You have benefited. Even if you have gathered 5 points of benefit in one gathering of half an hour or 45 minutes, that you said that I benefited from these 5 affairs, then my sister, you have benefited. The third point that I wish to make is that I know it is tempting to bring your babies and to bring very young children to these types of gatherings, but it is a disturbance. So if that is the case, that you know that your child may be disturbing others from listening or from paying attention, then we do have another room, as you know, another part of this masjid that is isolated from this part. And ideally, I would advise that those of you sisters that are married and you have young children, that you leave them with your husbands or your parents or a brother, meaning your own blood brother or a relative, so that you can focus for this half an hour, 45 minutes just upon ilm, not upon pulling your child from running away from you, not upon rocking your child or your baby because your baby has started crying, because that is a diversion for you also. I'm not just talking about the sisters around you, but it will divert you as well. So this is my nasiha to you, and inshallah this is the first of many gatherings, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala, wa billahi tawfiq, and with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lies guidance and success. So let us begin by mentioning عِذْمُ حَقِّ الزَّوْجِ, that the first chapter, عِذْمُ حَقِّ الزَّوْجِ, that the greatness of the right of the husband, because we are talking about the righteous wife. The righteous wife, she recognizes that her husband has a tremendous right. And that is due to the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, الرجال قوامون على النساء بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض وبما أنفقوا من أموالهم. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said in this ayah in Surah An-Nisa, ayah number 34, that the men are the protectors and maintainers of women, because Allah has made some of them excel the other, and because the men, they spend to support from their wealth, that they spend to support their families from their wealth. So this is the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given men that qawwama, or that authority and that level of maintenance and protection over the women. Just as Ibn Kathir rahimahullah ta'ala said, meaning الرجل قيم, that the man قيم على المرأة, that the man is in charge of the woman. He has charge over her. He is her head, her chief, the one in authority over her, and the one who corrects her when she inclines towards error. That's what Ibn Kathir said regarding this ayah. And he is, of course, the great mufassir. So you can just refer, when I mention Ibn Kathir, then just refer to the ayah in his tafsir al-Quran al-Azim, where he mentions that this is the role of the man. Imām Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, in his tafsir, he said in a taysir, he said meaning that it is the meaning of this ayah is that it is due to the excellence of men over women and the eminence which the men have been given over them. So this preeminence of the men over the women is from various aspects. Those that are related to the marriage and those that are general. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has specified the men to hold positions of leadership and authority over lands and nations and tribes. Likewise, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala specified prophethood and messengership to men to the exclusion of women. Likewise, there are particular acts of worship for which Allah has singled out men that He did not single out women for, such as the performance of jihad upon the battlefield, and the Eid prayer, meaning the leading of the Eid prayer, and the khutub, and the Jumu'ah prayers, for which the women are not obligated to attend. Meaning the Jumu'ah prayer, the woman doesn't have to attend. As for jihad, the jihad is exclusively for men upon the battlefield. The jihad of the woman is Hajj. Also due to the characteristics that Allah has given to men, the like of which is not possessed by women, such as sound intellect in times of stress, meaning to be able to weigh up the affairs and make the right decision. Composure when things become severe. Patience in times of immense trial. And likewise endurance, meaning physical endurance. These are all characteristics, not to say that women do not possess a share of them, but the preeminence is for men. You'll find it in men more than women. Likewise, men are particularized and they have this particular characteristic that Allah has singled them out with by way of obligation. And that is having to spend upon their wives. And indeed, the spending is not only upon his wife. Rather, it is general. Spending in many different ways, that is the duty of the man, that Allah is not obligated upon the woman. For example, that the man has to provide, if he is the father, he has to provide for his mother, for his own father, for his children, and for his wives. Likewise, he has to maintain the home. So he pays the bills. He pays all of the utilities that come into the house. That's the duty of the husband. So all of these affairs distinguish the man from the woman. So perhaps this is the reason for the saying of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَبِمَا أَنفَقُوا, due to the wealth that they spend. Meaning that Allah has given authority. And Allah has given this level, making the man, as Allah said, الرِّجَالُ قَوَّمُونَ عَلَى النِّسَاءِ, that the men are the maintainers and protectors in authority over women. Maybe that perhaps this is the reason why, because they have been specified with all of these affairs. And exactly what they spend is not stated. So this is an indication that the spending referred to here is general. Upon food, upon clothing, upon shelter, upon utilities, upon the gas, upon the water, upon the education of the children, upon marriages of their daughters and sons. If their son is not able to pay for himself, that the father he pays. The father pays for his daughter. For his sons, when they are young, and their education, when they go to school, the food that they're going to eat at school, a pat lunch, who pays for that? The father. So it is a general spending. So from all of this, it is known that the man is like a governor, like a sayyid, like a master for his wife. And she is with him like a captive. So his role is to take care of that which Allah has placed him in charge of. He must take care of it, take that responsibility, because Allah has put him in charge. So Allah has placed him in charge of these affairs. And her role in turn is to be obedient to Allah and to obey her husband. Another one of the scholars, Al-Qasimi, rahimahullah, he said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "Ar-rijalu qawwamuna ala an-nisa," that the men are the maintainers and protectors in authority over the women. So this term, qawwamun or qawwam, the qawwam is the one responsible for taking care of their welfare, managing their affairs, and also correcting them, disciplining them. So that's a huge burden, my sisters and my brothers, a huge burden. How can you discipline someone when you yourself are misbehaving? How can you discipline someone and correct someone when you don't have knowledge of the Sharia and knowledge of what is right and wrong? So it is a tremendous responsibility. So the man is responsible for those affairs, but that responsibility is immense. So the men, meaning that the men, they are in charge of, and they are ordered to take care of the manners and behavior of women. So they are responsible for their wives. So if she wants to leave the home and she's not dressed appropriately, he says to her, you have to wear the hijab, you have to wear the jilbab, you have to wear the khimar. Remove that makeup. He is responsible. Ordering them and forbidding them. If they do something haram, he tells her, stop backbiting. Don't spread namima. Don't speak about the secrets of the house to outsiders. Don't tell others about what happens between you and me. So he orders and he forbids, just as the ruler is responsible for his subjects. Just as the ruler is responsible. So just as the ruler, as in the hadith, kullukum ra'in, that each one of you is a shepherd over his flock, and each one of you will be questioned regarding his responsibility. So the ruler is a ra'in, that the ruler is a shepherd over his people, over his nation, so he shall be questioned. And the man is responsible over his family, and he shall be questioned. And the woman, she is responsible over the household of her husband, and she shall be questioned. So each, as you can see in these levels of responsibility, each has their own responsibility. So the ruler is responsible, the man is responsible, and the woman, she has responsibility also. But as for the man, then he is the head of the household. And he needs to take responsibility of his home. But that can only be achieved if he has wisdom that comes from understanding the Kitab and the Sunnah. That even if his knowledge is lacking, that he knows who to ask. That he doesn't make decisions independently and then ends up regretting them. So just as the ruler is responsible for his subjects, the man is responsible over his wife and children and his home. And this is, as Al-Qasimi said, due to two reasons. Due to the nature which Allah gave them. Meaning each of them has a nature. And there is no denying, my brothers and sisters, my sisters especially, there is no denying that regardless of where you live, which era you live in, which generation you live in, that the nature of man and woman is different. The physiology is different. The body is different. How the body behaves is different. Emotionally, they're different. How they see things, they're different. So there is a side to a woman that a man does not have in general. And there is a side to men that a woman does not have in general. And then there are affairs that they cross over in that are similar between both of them. And those are many affairs. But as for the nature of the woman and the nature of the man, then they are distinct characteristics that each one of them possesses. And secondly, due to the role which they carry out. So the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given the man his duty and the woman her duty is because each one of them in their nature, in their makeup, in their physiology, in their psychology, in their emotional outlook, that they are different to each other. And each of them, their role is different. And this isn't just the role that you find in the Quran and Sunnah, the role that actually when you look at men throughout the ages and women throughout their ages, that the way that they think, the way that they reason, the way that their outlook is, the way that their physical bodies are, that their roles are different. Of course, a man cannot have a child. Impossible for a man to give birth to a baby. Impossible for a man to breastfeed a child. These are the roles and duties of women. It is the woman that menstruates, not the man. So therefore the woman, in her role which she carries out, it is something that is connected to her physiology, connected to the way that Allah has made her body. So therefore, it is only an ignoramus who will say that the woman, that her duty, her prime duty is not to give birth and to raise children and to cultivate those children from babies. Only an ignoramus would say that. Why? Because her physical body has been made to feed the child. Imagine. You give birth to a child, you don't have to open up a fridge. You don't have to go to the shop. You don't have to go to the marketplace. The food of that child is within the body of the woman. So how can it be said that the duty of nurturing and feeding and raising the baby is not for the mother? She will breastfeed the child for 2 years. She will carry for another 9 months, meaning previous to the 2 years, she will carry that baby in her womb. That a man is not capable of carrying. Allah did not make him for that. So there is something within the innate nature of women that Allah has given to them that the man does not have, that also drives their role. It is a driver of her role because she doesn't have one baby. The only thing that came to prevent her having more than one child or having no children is the invention of the pill. Before that, there was very little to prevent a woman from having a child. So when the contraceptive pill came about, which was invented by the unbelievers so that they could increase in their promiscuity and fornication and immorality, that the woman, that she would get married and she would have children. So in between each of the children, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in most cases, that He prevents her from getting pregnant while she's nurturing and breastfeeding the baby. So every 2 years or every 18 months or so, she would get pregnant again. And this would only last between a certain age limit. And the older she became, the less likely she would be the less likely she is to give birth. And this is also something with which Allah has created her, because as the woman gets older and her body becomes less resilient, then likewise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from His mercy and His wisdom, that He makes her less likely to give birth. But when she's young, then she is prolific in childbirth. As she enters the late 30s and the 40s and the 50s in age, then it is less and less likely that she will give birth. So what does that do? That drives the actual role of women. So it is incorrect to assume that you Muslims, that you are the ones who say that the woman should stay in the home and get pregnant and have children and so on. No, that's how she's been created. That is the role of the woman, driven by her physiology, by her nature, by the way that Allah has created her. And as for the man, then the man can continue to have children right up until into his 90s. Because a man can impregnate women. So Allah has created them differently. So therefore, when you look at how Allah has created them, because remember we are talking about the context of marriage here, that whilst the woman is looking after the baby at home 2 years, okay, she's pregnant for 9 months approximately, sometimes more, sometimes less. And then she feeds the child for another 2 years. But after 2 years, what can you do? Leave the child at home and walk out and the child will look after itself? Of course not. The 2 years is just the breastfeeding period. Up until the child weans, is weaned onto solid food and can maybe visit the toilet by itself. Then for the progressive years, as the child gets older, the child still cannot look after itself. So the mother is there. So therefore the role of the man is driven, because he knows that while she is looking after and nurturing that child that I cannot do, I can't feed the child. So what does the man have to do? The man now has to go out. He has to hunt. He has to gather. He has to protect. He has to defend. Because the woman generally is and the woman is physically the weaker sex. Does that mean that every woman is weaker than every man? No. There are exceptions to the rule. But in general, Allah created men with a bigger build, with more strength, with greater height, with greater physical abilities. So therefore that drives the man into his role. Do you think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created man and woman in jest? That Allah created them and there's no direction? The very manner in which, or the very way in which Allah created each of the two sexes defines their role. It is not a matter of choice. So, whilst the woman, because if nature takes its course, so the man, he marries a woman, takes her as his wife. So they are married. They have relations. The relations, in most cases, necessitate children. Now, who's going to provide for her while she's feeding the child? Who's going to clothe her? If an attack comes upon a village, which of the two will stand up? Think about Middle Ages. Think about ancient times. Think about olden days. People come to attack the village. So where does the man stand and where does the woman stand? Ask yourself the question. Who is the one built to defend against pillage, against attack, against violence, against plunder? Which of the two out of these creations of Allah is built to defend and protect? Man. So who is the one who stays in the hut, stays in the cottage? And who is the one who goes to the edge of the village, which is with his spear and his shield and his sword? Or is it the man that stays at home and he says, okay, today I'll look after the baby. Can you just take the sword and go and fight the enemies? I don't think I'm up for it today. Who is it who does it, my sisters? We are living in times where you are indoctrinated, brainwashed into inverting these natural states with which Allah has created men and women. And all you have to do for a minute is just to take a step back and say, man, that humans have been upon the earth, for an immense period of time. So every time the village or the town or the settlement came under attack by the next village or by a nation, whose bodies and whose roles are such that they are the ones who go out with the sword and the spear to defend and to protect? Is it the men or is it the women? Who are the greater victims of violence? Meaning that who are the ones who stand and die in defense? Is it the men or the women? It is the men. Huge, swathes of men have died in battle over the years in protection of their towns, villages, nations, and so on. Protecting whom? Protecting their wealth, protecting their families, protecting their wives, protecting their children. So this is why when we read these narrations and these tafasir of the scholars, and the scholar says that this is due to two reasons: due to the nature with which Allah has created them with, and due to the role which they carry out. So sometimes we just go ahead and the sister will say, well, I don't really agree with that, because I don't think roles are fixed, and I don't think that nature is like... Because you're not thinking. You're parroting what you learned in the so-called Western liberal socialist environment. Right? Because they try to tell you that actually there's no distinction in roles. Because look, there's females in such and such an army nowadays. But they're the weak link in any army. The weak link in an army is when there are women in the army. And when the enemy army attacks, what's going to happen to those women? You tell me. What has been going on for centuries, up until Islam came and gave women their rights? What happens if the enemy army overpowers another army and there are women in that army? What happens to those women? Do I have to spell it out? What happens when an enemy attacks and overpowers the village? Who are the first victims? Women. When the Russians, who were on the side of the Western Allies, on the side of Britain and France, on the side of America, when they entered Berlin at the end of the Second World War, they said that history has recorded that there was a level of rape and killing of women that is hardly heard of in the history of humanity and civilization. The amount of German women that were raped and killed systematically and with such violence that those people who narrate it, if you look at some of their recordings and some of their writings, that they break down in tears, traumatized by having seen what they saw the Russian soldiers do to German women. And the same that happened when the Serbians, when they set up rape camps for Muslim women in Bosnia between 1992 and 1995. Gang raping and abusing women in rape camps, let alone the 65 or so concentration camps that they'd set up. But the fact is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made men the protectors of women. If those men take on their duty and take that duty seriously. So the role that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created men, that they provide for their women, they care for their women, they protect their women, they defend their women. They will kill, they will put their own lives on the line in defense of their families. So this first, meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned بِمَا فَضَّلَ اللَّهُ بَعْدَهُمْ عَلَى بَعْدٍ, due to the excellence which Allah has given to the man, to some of them, meaning the men, over the women. Meaning excellence in what? That they have more strength. They have more power. They're physically built differently. He said that this refers to the relationship between men and women, which means that the men have a position of dominance over them due to some superiority which Allah has given to the men over the women, because they're physically stronger. They have greater endurance. Let them run. And let's see who stops first. Meaning take the average man and take the average woman. Let them have a race. Who's going to win? Take the average man and take the average woman. Let them go on a marathon. Who's going to win? You know, even when the kuffar, they set up these games and these entertainments that they set up. Let the best tennis player play against the best female tennis player. Who's going to win? The best female footballer against the best male football team. Who's going to win? The marathon runner male and the marathon runner female. Who's going to win? Physical endurance is much greater in men. And that's been the case, you know, for centuries, thousands of years. Men are physically stronger. They have more endurance. Likewise, when the enemy attack comes, men are physically built to defend. Women are not. So this is the point I was making throughout history. These roles are defined. And this is because of the fact that Allah has created them, giving one excellence in some affairs over the other. But the man can't, nurture a baby because he can't breastfeed it. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given something to the women that He did not give to the man. And other than that. And likewise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, لِلرِّجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةً. That for the men, there is a degree over the women. From Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 228, Allah has said that. وَلِلرِّجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةً. That men have a degree over the women. Ibn Kathir said, meaning in excellence and in the physical stature and nature given to them, in character, meaning that they have a greater ability to endure stress than women. That's why men can go into battle and see thousands dead in front of them and maybe even kill and then return home. Men can do that. For women, it is not easy, if not impossible. In the obedience due to men, Allah has created them different. Why? Because now Allah, due to this excellence, Allah has made the woman obedient to her husband. And likewise, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given the men excellence because they must spend and take care of the welfare of their women, of their daughters, of their wives, of their mothers. Men are responsible. And in excellence in this life and in the hereafter, if they obey Allah and are dutiful. That's what Ibn Kathir says. So I say to you, my sisters, if you even ponder over that, because I understand in the societies that we live in and in the generations that we live in now, that feminism has taken such a strong hold upon the minds of women that they've stopped thinking for themselves, even Muslim women, because that's who I'm focusing upon here. My sisters, there are things that Allah can punish men for, that He will not punish women for. Such as, for example, the husband who withholds provision and maintenance for his wife. He is under the threat of Allah's anger. He is sinful. If he does not provide for his children, he is sinful. But the woman, she is not sinful for not providing because it's not her job. The man is sinful for running away from defending his wife. his wife and children are about to be attacked, he leaves them and runs away. Cowardly. Allah will call him to account. You left your wife and children and you ran? What kind of a protector are you? Ar-rijalu qawwamuna ala nisa. The men are the protectors and maintainers of women. Where's your protection and maintenance of your wife and child when they were being attacked and you ran? What about the woman? The woman, she has no ability to protect herself against an onslaught. The man is responsible for protecting his land, his family, his honor, his wealth. The man is sinful for fleeing from the battlefield. The woman is not on the battlefield in the first place. From the major sins, from the destructive sins, the 7 deadly sins, one of them is what? To flee on the day when the armies meet. Who is that for? Men or women? Men. The man is punished and sinful for abandoning the Jumu'ah and the Jama'ah in the masjid. The woman is not. So all of this, the man has this burden of responsibility. These particular affairs that he specified with, that the woman is not. But in the world of toxic and radical feminism, all of this is swept under the carpet. But the woman who checks herself and the woman who truly questions herself, she says, not to say that I'm asking you to look at your husband and say, well, he's the most perfect man that in the world, which you actually may think, but not that you look at your husband like that, but at the fact that let's look at the generic or the jins, men and women. And when you look at each of them, you see that there are distinctive roles, that their physiology, their psychology, their outlook, the way that they are driven in life, the things that they care about, the things that they get excited about, that they are different. Between the man and the woman, there are differences. The Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith reported by Ibn Sunni in Amal al-Yawm wa Layla, Shaykh al-Albani declared it to be sahih in Jami al-Saghir. The Prophet ﷺ said that every soul from the children of Adam is a sayyid, is a master. Every soul from the children of Adam is a master. So the man is the sayyid over his family. The man is a sayyid. Kullu nafsin min bani Adam sayyid. Every soul from the children of Adam is a sayyid. فَالرَّجُلُ سَيِّدُ أَهْلِهِ. So the man is the master over his family. وَالْمَرْأَةُ سَيِّدَةُ بَيْتِهَا. And as for the woman, then she is the mistress of her household. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us that each one of us, we have an authority. We have, that we are chiefs of something. So the man is in charge. He's the master of the house. So therefore, recognizing these affairs is the goal of today's lesson. That you are not deceived, that you are not beguiled, you are not stupefied by what you read in the media. You see a woman now that she takes some drugs or whatever and she starts growing a beard. She shaves her head and she wears trousers and she has surgery and she walks around like a man and you say, look, she's become a man. Has she become a man? Just because she's tried to change the nature with which she was created, it doesn't change the reality. Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala said, change the name of something does not change its reality. How? Where are our uqul? Changing the name of something does not change its reality. By calling a goat a pig does not make the goat a pig. It doesn't. That's reality. Where is the intelligence of the people of today? That we are entering into an era where information is readily available, but it is just information. Comprehending and understanding information is for the faqih. It's for the one of understanding. Where is the fiqh of the people? Where is the fahm of the people? Where is the uqul of the people? Where is the common sense of the people? That you think that you can change the name of something and it becomes that thing? So you identify as a goat, so you become a goat? You identify as a horse, so you become a horse? An Anglo-Saxon man, white Anglo-Saxon, identifies as an African from Gambia, and he becomes an African from Gambia because he wishes to identify himself in that manner. Or a woman, she tries to identify herself as a man and she becomes a man, does she? How is that possible? Where is the common sense? And that's why it is these principles of Islam. Changing the name of something does not change its reality. Calling wine by a different name does not make it halal. Calling riba by a different name, interest by a different name, does not make that interest and the dealing in interest halal. By calling this riba-based loan that many of our youth, boys and girls, they are taking from the government or from institutions, and they call it a student loan, and they say, no, it's not interest, it is a loan, it is riba. The repayment involves paying riba. It is haram, it is a major sin. But by changing its name, by making it sound attractive, a student loan does not make it halal. It is haram, it is riba. So changing the name of something does not change its reality. You know your reality as a woman. You know what happens to you once a month. You know what would happen to you if you became pregnant. You know your responsibility towards the child that you give birth to. You know that in the absence of contraception that you will continually get pregnant and pregnant and pregnant if Allah wills. You know that drives, that is a driving factor in how you behave, how you live. You need protection. You want that man in your home, but they tell you don't need a man. You can do it, sis. What do you want a man for? Because this is really an inversion of your own nature, trying to change it and manipulate it away from its true reality, and that will only harm you. And how many women there are who have reached their 50s and 60s alone, spinsters, no children. But she's got 3 houses, mashallah. Lonely. She can only live in 1 room. But she's got 3 houses. For what? So she can order from Marks and Spencer because she's got a bit more money. So she can order online more of the luxuries. But she's alone. No children, no grandchildren. No husband. No one to hug her. No one to embrace her. No grandchildren to sit on her lap. So she sits in a room, and the relationship that she's having is with her TV screen. She laughs when the comedy comes on. She cries when that romantic movie finishes. That's her life. We are physical beings that need social interaction. And the nature of people is beginning to be changed through all of these radical and toxic ideologies. Equality, they call it equality, but it's not equality, it's changing nature. Feminism. Anyone who questions it, he's a misogynist. So anyone who rocks the boat is seen as an enemy of the cause. So you need to reflect, my sisters, look at your nature, look at yourselves, look at your creation. There's no point in crying over it, rather you should rejoice in it. Praise Allah for it. Allah created you like that. That's why men want to marry them. That's why men want to marry women, because they're attracted to them. You have something that men want. They want the companionship of women. They want to be in the company of their wives, because you have something that they will not get from the men. Because Allah has placed your beauty into the eyes of men. But you will conceal it, inshallah, because that's what the righteous woman does. Except to the man that she marries, that he loves her and she loves him in the ideal marriage. Not that ideals are always present in every situation. There are weaknesses, and we'll come to them, inshallah, over these duruth. And upon that note, inshallah, for today we'll conclude. وَجَزَاكُمُ اللَّهُ خَيْرًا وَالْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ وَصَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَى نَبِيِّنَا مُحَمَّدٍ وَعَلَى آلِهِ وَصَحْبِهِ أَجْمَعِينَ.